As I said last week, you probably won't need this recording. It's just as a backup. You get class recordings sent out. I don't know whether they're doing it as a module, like a full unit with lots and lots of slides and a big recording, or whether they are sending them out week to week. They'll do one of that anyway. Um, so this is only if we need it for, I don't know, if we talk about something really, really important. Not that we wouldn't necessarily always talk about something really, really important, but if we go off and do something really important, then we can get access to this video as well. Um, all right, I'll start. So this is Hayden Institute of Education. It's the certificate for in alcohol and other drugs. This module is work in alcohol and other drugs context. It's CHCAOD001, and it's the second session of 4. So as I said, we've got 2 more left after this. And starting with the acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Hayden Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Just to start off, we'll just do the housekeeping. This is the expectations of you, I guess, and our expectations of us. So expectations both ways. To start, we're a camera college. Nobody's forcing anybody to come to the session, come to the class on an evening. So if you're in the class, just put your camera on. It's some people don't realize it can be creepy to just sit and just sit behind a camera while everybody else has got their cameras on. It can be uncomfortable for some people. So with that, microphones off. It's just with animals and children and traffic and things that go off in the background. No gunshots or anything like that. Hopefully, just the normal standard stuff that can come back through on a microphone. It's a bit difficult to try and listen for some people. So let's cameras on, microphones off. Class participation when we're interacting, and if there's people wanting to say stuff, just use the reactions icon underneath the camera, and it just means that everybody gets put in a logistic order so that everybody can see who's got their hand up first. So with a few hours of study every night, we obviously need a break after an hour, sometimes before that. So we have a 10-minute break every hour. So that's 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock for 10 minutes each. We're trying to look after each other. So as it says, we're all learners and in this together. So be mindful and kind with your words and respect the opinion of others. Trying to, respect other people's opinions, values, beliefs. We all believe something, sometimes not because it makes sense, but because we feel like it should be that way. And that isn't always the best way to, best reason to believe something. So we'll just be respectful of other people while we're still struggling with our own beliefs. No smoking or vaping or alcohol on camera. As I said, it's just like a staff meeting or a TAFE class. We wouldn't be doing it there, so we don't do it in class. It can be a trigger for other people that are trying to give up something and then they come to a AOD class and think that it's okay here. That's not really a good look for anyone. Equally with triggers, the content can be triggering in anything. It can be pretty overwhelming and can be intense. So don't feel guilty about just stepping back, stepping out to look after yourself and just get some fresh air and glass of water or something just to cool you, calm you, calm yourself. Because it's important to be kind to yourself. Sorry, I don't know what them words were. It's important to be kind to yourself. You've got to look after yourself. If you can't look after yourself, it's going to be difficult to look after the other people that you're trying desperately to look after, whether that's family or people at work. You have to put yourself first so that you're ready, empowered, and alive for other people. So with that, we'll jump into session 2, looking at drug harms. A lot about linked drugs tonight and the effects that one can have on another. So medications, interactions with AOD, social context of AOD, and economic burden on Australian society. It's got a little bit to do with it. I saw a news article earlier today, so I just thought I'd throw that on first, and we can just have a look at this. I wouldn't normally throw random news articles on, but it did come out today, and it's kind of linked. So just in case you're driving or anything like that, large negative health effects, says a psychiatrist, cautions against cannabis legalization. So just before we go down, no, we're not watching the video. I just wanted to stop playing. So legalization of cannabis and decriminalization of cannabis and the criminalization of cannabis, all three separate things. A lot of people do have massive opinions about it. You might or might not have much opinion about it in here, or you might not know about it. At the moment, obviously, cannabis is criminalized. You are a criminal morally in society. A lot of people would say that you shouldn't be doing it. It's wrong. It's against the law, so don't do it. But then if we move a little bit away from that and say, okay, well, if we decriminalized it, made it not made it legal, but stopped people getting punished for stopped turning people criminals because they were using a tiny bit that wasn't medicinal, like it hasn't been gained from GP. If we moved a tiny way away from that, then surely that's okay. We don't have to go all the way to saying cannabis is fine. There's nothing wrong with it and it should be free for everybody to use. It should be open access. So there's going to be an opinion point somewhere. There's a political viewpoint, there's a moral viewpoint, there's like an ethical viewpoint in there somewhere. I'm not saying you need to have one, but this article is stating that a psychiatrist says that legalization of cannabis would be massively problematic. Now, first, and I just wanted to dissect the article first. So Brain and Mind Centre psychiatrist Professor Ian Hickey weighs in on the debate over legalization of cannabis, warning it could have large negative health effects. Lots of people want to see the criminal element removed and not have people chased around by police around minor issues of drug use. Just that bit there. Even the criminal justice system is divided because some police, barristers, prosecution, courts, some of them do want to do this and not have police running around punishing people for a tiny bit when that's the only thing they've done wrong. Like we're wasting all of the criminal justice system time here. And then obviously we've got the other people on the other side saying, but if it's illegal, then that's the whole job of the criminal justice system, to chase around after people who are doing things wrong in society. So why wouldn't we expect them to do that? So Mr. Hickey told Sky News host Peter Credlin, the notion that legalization will entirely remove the criminal element just basically isn't true. And the supply issue is really the main issue here. So we could have something where the end user, the person who is using tiny, tiny bits, could stay out of trouble while the supply issue is put under control. There are many people who have invested or want to invest in the commercialization of cannabis because there will be a large market. So the psychiatrist is saying, if the government did move towards legalization, you've got a massive group of industry that would start making it legally, and it would be a massive profit-making scheme, and that wouldn't necessarily mean that the legal issues would stop, because now it's just on a much bigger scale. So there'll also be inevitably large negative health effects, particularly on mental health and particularly on young people. We don't have to make the problem worse. That's it. That's all the article says. Bearing in mind, this is on Sky News, which is a very conservative, classically conservative news website. So they put in one viewpoint out there, which is great. It's fine. It's just that we would need a lot of other information from lots of other professionals. So plenty of psychiatrists talking about it, GPs, mental health workers, even maybe politicians. Do we need politicians to weigh in on that? But the psychiatrist is basically saying that even legalization would cause a lot more problems. So that will be useful somewhere. It's not useful for any of the assessments we're doing in this module, but that's fine. It came out today, so I thought I'd put it in. Any opinions? I'll pause it. Just be aware. Right, get rid of that. And drug harms. Alcohol being the main one. So interactions, alcohol and other medications. Alcohol can interact with some medication, with some medicines, including those you can buy over the counter. Some of these interactions can be toxic, stop the medicine from working properly, or enhance the side effects of the medication. So when looking typically at alcohol is a depressant, so it depresses the nervous system and slows the nervous system down, and slows feeling and perception and slows our brain down. So when there's something in our body that's doing that, if we're trying to put medicine into our body, then it's going to have a different effect. And it's not the same kind of effect for everything. You would think that alcohol and anything, it's going to do the same thing. But with some medications, it's going to decrease that potency. And with other medications, it's going to inflame their intensity, where we're talking about pain medication. So pain medication could be like a physical pain type medication that works just on the physical muscles and tendons in our body. But if you've got medications working on our nerves, or if you've got medication that's going past the muscle, past the nerve, and into the brain, and trying to sort pain out in the brain, then alcohol is going to affect that as well. So it's important to know when it's not safe to drink alcohol and take medications. The key website, Health Direct, is useful. Just wanted to throw up an alcohol thing about units and what they are. So if somebody was very naive, then they might think that somebody saying, don't mix alcohol with your medication, somebody might think that, okay, well, I'm not going to have a glass of beer. I'm not going to have a schooner with my pills. I'll leave it half an hour before I finish my pills, and then I'll have one. Or I'm not going to have a glass of wine to wash the medication down. That would be silly. But I'll wait half an hour or an hour or two. That's not really what we're on about. We're on about the fact that alcohol takes at least an hour to leave the body. And even when the alcohol's left the body, it's still had an effect on the body. So we need to leave plenty of room for the medication. So when I'm talking about alcohol, I'm talking about um, 1 unit of alcohol here. 1 unit of alcohol is about 10 milliliters. So a couple of tablespoonfuls. No, not tablespoonfuls, teaspoonfuls. A couple of teaspoonfuls. And that's how that will leave the body in around an hour. So 1 unit is equivalent to a single measure of spirits. Half a pint is 2 schooners of 4% lager, average beer, or a teeny glass of 12% wine. So average wine. Not a small glass of wine. I think it's about half or 2/3 of a small glass of wine. That's what it's saying. This advice is from Drink Coach. It's like a UK website. So this 1 unit of alcohol, so whatever that is, a couple of schooners, tiny glass of wine, or a shot of spirits, takes an hour to leave the body. But that doesn't mean the body's back to normal after that hour. So if it's depressed your nervous system in that hour, how long, depending on who we are, different size person, it's going to take even longer for the nervous system, the immune system to build back up again to a normal level, to where the medication is going to be able to work normally. Yes, Lukey, put your hand up.
I don't know if it's worth noting too that alcohol can be, I mean, it's bandied about a bit, alcohol being a gateway substance, people's inhibitions are lowered.
Yeah.
And in those settings, in clubs and pubs, people are open to taking other things like MDMA or cocaine or, or even, illicit medications like painkillers or Xanax or something like that. It's another high risk.
It is, and if somebody if it gets prescribed from a doctor, if it gets put onto a script by a doctor, a lot of people will be thinking, "Oh, that's fine. It's fine to use because the doctor prescribes it." Well, that's fair enough if he's prescribed it to a certain person for a certain thing, and people might see it as less harmful because um, a doctor is prescribing it. But for a start, for somebody to take any prescribed medication when they haven't been prescribed it, that's straight away an offence, unfortunately. So to take, even not recreationally, if I've got back pain, like really, really bad back pain, and I go and find my mum's back pain pills and take them, I'm committing an offence. Or a friend of mine who was ADHD advised somebody else who he thought was ADHD, take these will help. And all of that is all kind of sincere. There's a sincerity in it. Mum gives you her back pain pills because you've got a really, really bad back. She's got these, whether it's some sort of codeine, or it's something a bit stronger, and it's been prescribed by the doctor, and she says, "Oh, they'll be brilliant. They'll be really good for your shoulder pain. They really help me." Or somebody's struggling to concentrate, and then somebody at high school says, "Oh, take my ADHD pills for your exams. They'll really help. You'll be able to focus a lot more." So even in the sincerity, there's a lot of problems that can get caused. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just touching base with the prescriptions as well. Like antidepressants for me during my drinking days, I was on antidepressants and I don't know, they were working together. And then when I did get sober, my antidepressants stopped working. So we had to find a new chemical, a new antidepressant to make my depression a little bit more easier, I guess, because I was sober. So it can get mixed up with even just simple drugs like antidepressants as well.
It can, yeah. With antidepressants, there's a theory that long-term use of antidepressants can lead to suicide, especially if started too young, like a lot of teenage suicide, and the link between these um, suicide victims and the fact that they'd been taking antidepressants for many years. So when we put that as a foundation, I know a few instances of somebody taking nerve pain medication, so like for a bad back, something like that, but it would usually be prescribed for for depression. So they're taking antidepressants for back pain because it helps the nerves. When somebody was taking that with alcohol and they weren't suicidal before that, they had no history of suicide ideation, no history of self harm, and the connection about these nerve pain pills and the alcohol, putting them together and feeling that they genuinely wanted to end their life, not because the pain was bad, but because of this horrible depression that came while taking antidepressant pills. And so that's not a problem with the pills. That's a problem with they literally didn't realize mixing these pills with a glass or two of red wine, and it was not a wasn't a happy outcome. And hopefully in the end the nerve pain wears down and people manage to stabilize. Yes, Justin.
Just a quick one. I don't really want to hold this up, but isn't that quite dangerous, say, for someone who isn't depressed to be taking, like, because isn't it going to muck with your natural brain chemistry? Like, isn't that going to have an effect as it is? You know what I mean?
It would, but and there's obviously the GP and the client or the patient. The GP and the patient have to weigh everything up. And somebody's struggling with family or job or education, and they're trying to deal with life, and they have to make an assumption of, okay, I'm struggling with my life, so the GP has said, yes, you are going through a depressive patch. This is depression. So let's.
Oh, no, I meant more on the nerve pain thing. So, like, if they're just having pain, but then they're giving him antidepressants, I'm like, that's kind of sketchy. Because I do remember I actually got prescribed this because I can't remember what happened. I'd done something, and yeah, well, they said it was related to nerve pain. And they said this is actually an antidepressant, and I just didn't end up taking them because I didn't want to risk there was nothing wrong with my brain. It was my nerves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Good point, Justin. I'm not a GP, but but it happens. Like that's what gets prescribed. If it's pain, chronic pain that has been around, that like sits in the body and just does not go away for a chronic means like longer than 4, 5, 6 months. When somebody's got chronic pain for years, it can potentially send them into a depressive state, just having that pain for that long. But yeah, when a GP prescribes the nerve pain medication, which is an antidepressant for the chronic pain, it's most of us have to just trust the GP, or not in the end, or not like you did. Yeah. So this website is good. It's a good resource because when it's talking about unit and risk, you will literally need this to talk to somebody about and just help somebody work through it. So some people don't know what a unit of alcohol is. That's fine. But when you explain what a unit of alcohol is, a couple of schooners, one shot, a tiny glass of wine, and then you count up like how much they're having a day, a week, every few days, over the weekend. Is it steady gaining progressively more and more alcohol, or is it massive binging every other weekend? Like it's all alcoholism, whether it's massive binging or it's a steady progression over. So once you're calculating that and you're calculating that with somebody else, and men and women are advised not to regularly drink more than 14 units a week. So you measure the person's intake, you then say, okay, well, you're drinking 12, 13. You advise not to drink more than 14 a week. And you coming into us saying that people are saying you've got alcohol problems or you're feeling a bit depressed. Obviously, alcohol being a depressant for our nervous system, long-term alcohol use will depress people. So if pregnant or breastfeeding, you're advised not to drink alcohol at all. That's the massive key medical advice. There's no safe levels of alcohol. The way they're talking about it, there's no safe level of alcohol to drink for anyone. It's just that they talk about low risk, increased risk, and higher risk. And whether we all drink or not, or a few people have a small amount, they're saying the UK health direction is saying that there's no safe level because of what it is, literally what it is. On old movies, like Western movies, the cowboys would walk into the bar in the Wild West and the barman would say, "So what's your poison, mate?" Not mate, because he's not Australian, but they'd say, "Yeah, what's your poison?" And you would say, "Are you having like an old beer, a whiskey? What is it that you're drinking?" And that word, it was a bit of a cliche then, but that's literally what they're classing it as. It's a poison that we get used to, that we take it as it has a bit of nasty. It can have nasty after effects, but at the time, it's all good. What were you going to mention, Luffy?
I was just going to say that as workers, we have to be really careful with people who are alcoholics. Like we especially coming off it, it could potentially be very dangerous. It's one thing in the detoxes we used to say, alcoholics could die withdrawing from alcohol. Heroin addicts think they're going to die, but alcoholics can die if it's not, if there's no, oversight by a GP and things like that. We have to think of the things like the delirium tremens and seizures and things like that. And oftentimes alcoholics, in order to prepare to come off alcohol, have to sort of moderate their drinking down to a sort of safe level so that they can then detox. I just thought it was worth mentioning that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably why the government's taken the harm minimization drug strategy as the one to go with, because you can't, because of like strong opiates like heroin and alcohol, because of them two things, you literally, as a drug and alcohol worker, you literally can't tell people, okay, this is how we're going to get you off that substance. We're going to help you go cold turkey. like this. We literally can't do that because we could kill people trying to get somebody off alcohol. So the government's harm minimization strategy is, for most people, the safest way to help. Might not be the quickest, but it might be the safest. And where one method doesn't fit everyone, this can be the safest for most people. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think with the media also, it gets a little bit confusing and tricky, not just with drugs or alcohol. At one point they say eggs are really bad for us, for our cholesterol. And then they say, no, actually, they're really good for us. And then they come out
Yeah.
with, red wine is good with dinner. It gives you longevity for this and that. And it's just, I don't even know if they know what they're talking about, to be honest, half the time. Because one minute
Yeah.
they say it's good for you, and then the next minute they say it's not good for you. Like, what is it? Make your mind up.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll just leave this website now. So there's a couple of resources on here. Taking the test, it's handy if you can, and obviously you're not going to be judging anybody, but even talking to somebody about alcohol, when you speak to them, they could feel judged by you. So if you can be objective and just say, look, have a look at this test, or we're calculating the units a week, or just have a look. You download the app and then have a look at what it says and then get back to me, because we don't. The most important thing is that nobody feels like we're judging them. We can't feel like, or they can't feel like we're judging them. Otherwise, we've lost our first battle, because our main battle is to get a rapport with the client. If we can't get that because they're thinking we're judging them, we've messed up straight away. So quite a useful thing. I'll put this link in the chat just for, it could be, you might use it in an assessment, you might use it at work. Even if you're not if you're not working in community services and you're talking to like an employee that you're thinking, why is he late all the time? Why has he started? What's happening to his home life? He used to be great, or they used to be great, but what's going on now? Unfortunately, you're not planning to work in drug and alcohol, but you've got somebody working for you in hospitality or in construction, and you're trying to figure out what the problem is. There was one guy in rehab. He's a young 25-year-old lad, and he came into rehab for alcohol problems, and he said that his alcohol had got so bad he was drinking all the time. Can't remember what, but he was literally never sober, and he was shelf stacking in Woolies, and he'd messed up a few relationships. So he said, this was before he came into rehab. He said, I'm over it. I'm going to go cold turkey on the alcohol. I'm going to go to work normal. I'm going to change my life for the better. And he lasted 2 days at work at Woolies, where when he was sober, he went in and people were saying, what is wrong with you? You can't work properly. You're not, you're making all these mistakes. You're getting aggro with half of the people that you're working with. What's happened between last week and this week? And he realized that now is the time to probably go to rehab, because he only literally feels normal now because he's on alcohol. And he did do well, but he was a good bloke, but he literally needed a few months of alcohol so that he could realize what normal was. Yeah, I'll get rid of that. So looking at alcohol and medications, medicines and alcohol, problems can happen with many different medicines. The most common medications are antibiotics, antidepressants, painkillers, sleeping tablets, cough, cold remedies, and some travel and allergy medicines. Bearing in mind that looking down all of them, alcohol can either reduce the potency or increase something else about them. That's not even bringing into the fact that mixing alcohol chemical with this other chemical could have some other poisonous effect on our body. So if you take the wrong medicine with alcohol, nausea and vomiting, headaches, drowsiness, sleepiness, dizziness and fainting, blood pressure changes, uncharacteristic behavior, poor or loss of coordination accidents. So the big questions are, when you're talking to somebody and you're trying to advise them, okay, you're drinking a lot of alcohol, and now this medication, you've been prescribed, maybe, or you've been prescribed a while ago. The big question is that we need to ask the client, is it better to not take the pain medication or whatever medication? It could be antibiotics because they've just been in surgery, but they're already alcoholic. Now, we would never advise somebody not to take prescribed medication, but it's like, which is worse, and which do you need to speak to your doctor about? Should you not take the antibiotics or the antidepressants or the pain medication because you're drinking so much alcohol? And if we can't get you to reduce the alcohol, because it might be dangerous to reduce the alcohol, what's the right thing to do? So again, then you've got to work with the client and the GP, maybe a psychiatrist, and bring everybody in and say, all right, what is the best thing for this person? Because we don't want to make anything worse, really. So benzos and methadone. Be very careful about drinking alcohol if you're taking benzos, methadone, or other medicines that depress the central nervous system. Alcohol can be very dangerous, even fatal, if you're taking these medications. I'll put this in the easier. It's it's not working. Okay, so it's a dead link. Oh well. So benzos, mental health issues prescribed for anxiety and insomnia. A lot of times people might, if somebody's addicted to like ice or stimulants, and they're getting elevated and they're taking something to build them up, too much of the consequences can be not being able to bring themselves down to a normal state. So somebody that's using a lot of stimulants, the GP then might prescribe like something to bring them down again, so like these, even to the point that long-term use of like ADHD medication. ADHD medication is a stimulant, usually, most often, and long-term use, if you've been taking it for a long, long time, then it can affect the brain to the point that really only something to bring your brain down again can help. So risks: dependence, confusion, dizziness, moodiness. In this case, dependence, physical dependence to start with. I mentioned last week that we've got physical dependence and psychological dependence. Psychological dependence, that's what GPs would be calling addiction. So we've got physical dependence to start, but obviously if it's affecting the brain, it can be psychologically dependent. For older people, falls and memory loss, withdrawals, hallucinations, aggression, sensitivity to light and sound. The interactions, the single biggest prescribed drug type that leads to overdoses and death. 6.8% of all drug-related hospitalizations in 2018 to 19. So the political response. The House of Representatives Health Committee they've got their own decision. we've got the 2013 to 2018, GPs became more aware and more reluctant to prescribe the benzos. We needed, in past 20 years, we needed to get GPs up to speed, GPs up to knowing certain things that are happening. And while GPs study for years to do a great job, but there's certain things that GPs don't, they just don't study. Like a GP wouldn't necessarily know first aid. GP wouldn't necessarily know all about addiction in the brain, especially if they've specialized in a different area. So there's certain things that GPs just do not understand and aren't taught in medical school, which is why certain political viewpoints have tried to support GPs in trying to get them upskilled and updated in the way that the industry is going with AOD. So researching. I guess the best thing to do is to just have a quick look into one. These mental health medications, pretty common, very common in detoxes and rehabs. Risperidone, Effexor, diazepam. Just have a quick Google of either of these and see what it might interact negatively with. So diazepam, common anxiety medication, Effexor for quite a lot of panic attacks. And if a lot of people are getting prescribed these by GPs or psychiatrists, what could be the negative effect with it? And then risperidone, that's such a common one for schizophrenia. And there's two types of schizophrenia, type 1 schizophrenia and type 2 schizophrenia, that a lot of people, there's different medication used for both the types. And depending on what type of schizophrenia, the GP is going to prescribe different medication. So a quick Google there. Okay, it's offering marijuana, alcohol. See what you can find. In the last 5 minutes. Whatever you find, any of the medications, just chuck it in the chat. That's probably easiest. I guess a good Google would be negative effects of whatever when mixed with whatever. All right. Sorry, Madison. Antipsychotics and marijuana cause sedation and impairment of attention, judgment, thinking, and psychomotor skills. Yeah. And which is a bit bizarre, but quite often after long-term use of marijuana, people might genuinely be taking antipsychotics. So the antipsychotics that they need, but then they still think they need to take marijuana as well. It's just it's a massive cycle of making everything worse. Okay, alcohol diazepam. Yeah, it's like being hit by a log. Nobody said that, but being run over like a steamroller and can't wake up. Xanax and alcohol, a central nervous system, depressants, together they amplify each other's sedative effects, leading to excessive drowsiness, impaired coordination, respiratory depression, unconsciousness, even death. Yeah, psychosis and a lot of drugs and alcohol. Right, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there and we'll come back after break. 10 minutes time. I'll do a few more slides. I just wanted to get a bit further through before I jump onto the assessments. I was wanting to do some role play and get everybody doing role play later, but I'll get through a bit more of this first. So when I was talking about the criminal justice system, we're talking about drug and alcohol. Is it a health problem or is it a crime problem? Obviously, it's a bit of both, but the the media wants to tell us where the government should be spending the money. Like, should the government be throwing the money at the criminal justice system because it's a crime problem, or should they be throwing the money at the health system? And is addiction a disease? Is drug and alcohol issues, are they a mental health disorder? Is it addiction a disease? Is it a syndrome in the brain? What is it, and where does the government need to throw the money at? And nobody can answer it really properly. So social impact, we've got risky behavior and criminal activity, driving under the influence of any of the substances, family, domestic violence and sexual violence, homicide, murder, manslaughter, culpable driving on negligence, and victimization. So all of these things, when it's having a heavy impact on society, then obviously something does need to be done. What the answer is, obviously, unless we're political legislation makers in the future, any of us, then don't really know what the best thing to do would be. So to start with, no, you're not doing that. We're looking at, that's not an assessment. It's looking at risky behavior and criminal activity. 70% of drinkers put themselves or other at risk of harm. And that's 70% of drinkers. 17% of people that drink alcohol put themselves or other people at risk of harm. That could be the party lifestyle on the street. That could be getting home to somebody and inflicting harm there. It could be driving under the influence. So that's just alcohol. Risky drinkers were more likely to engage in risky behavior. And that's partly why people use alcohol, because the inhibitions are reduced. So I feel like I'm a little bit braver if I have a certain amount of alcohol. Whether that's a young bloke that I knew that had never dated a girl sober, or he'd never asked a girl out sober, he'd always the amount of guys that always use alcohol and need alcohol to date somebody or ask somebody out, like it, and that's not new. Like that goes back to grandparents' age as well, where even grandparents and great grandparents, to approach a female or approach a member, I was going to say a member of the opposite sex, but to approach somebody that you wanted to ask out on a date, you might need something to give you a bit of courage, which is why alcohol's been around for a long, long time. So illicit drug users were more likely to engage in criminal behavior. Criminal activity is declining despite that. Don't know where that statistics come from, but there we go. 3.1% of illicit drug users created a disturbance or stole goods. This is on the decline too. 0.6% of people using physically abused somebody. This figure is declining too. So if somebody is using something, whether that's something they feel the need to use it, or whether that's something that somebody wants to use, the chances are somebody's going to be negatively affected or put in harm's way because somebody's using that. Family domestic violence. There's a couple of modules that focus on family domestic violence as well that you've got to do at some point in the course. So family domestic or sexual violence more likely when under the influence of alcohol and other drugs. Perpetration of violence against an intimate partner or former partner, again, also called intimate partner violence. Women at a higher risk of male perpetrated violence. That doesn't include men being at risk of partner violence, whether that's in female to men domestic violence, or whether that's male to male domestic violence. But then, even then, that excludes women to women intimate partner violence. So it's the link is that even if we're not studying family and domestic violence, alcohol and other drugs makes this horrible thing more prevalent. family domestic sexual violence. Hold on. If I can't understand it, I can't read it. Of woman who experienced physical or sexual. This is like, I didn't write this. I just have to figure out what it says or means. Women who experienced physical or sexual abuse in the past 10 years have believed alcohol was a contributor. Okay. 2019 to 21% of Australians aged 14 and over have been verbally or physically abused by somebody under the influence of alcohol. Domestic family violence incidents were significantly more likely than other violent incidents to involve drug use. So, on the one hand, like somebody mentioned, alcohol is, I think it was Justin, alcohol is worse for society than that's a big overstep, than some of the illegal drugs that are in society. Alcohol is a negative influence in society when other illegal drugs aren't as bad. But once people start linking alcohol with social harms, then other drugs do get involved, which, whether that's ice, whether that's benzos, opiates, once these level of things are started to be used and abused more prevalently, then it's more than just people getting aggro on the streets. It starts to spread out a bit more. So 9.9% of drinkers reported driving a motor vehicle in 2016. 15% of illicit drug users drove under the influence in the last 12 months in 2016. A DUI significantly increases the risk of road accidents. 2020, 93 drivers and motorcycle riders were killed with the blood alcohol concentration above the legal limit. Obviously, we need to get that down. That has to, in the AOD sector, thanks, Glenn. You didn't miss much. So that was what I was looking at there. You do get all these slides. 2020 the statistics show a 38% decrease from 2008 to 2010. So I don't know whether anybody's cooking the statistics, hopefully not, but through COVID, before and after the statistics, the National Drug Survey did show that people are getting healthier. Not that people are using less drugs, but people are just being wiser and safer with it. Homicide. I'm not American, so homicide. Murder, manslaughter, culpable driving, or negligent behavior causing death. Victims, 25% had consumed alcohol, 28% had taken illicit drugs. Offenders, 17% consumed alcohol, down from 28% in 2018 to 19, and 10% illicit drugs. With this one, the victims, there's a part of politics that are going to say that alcohol is bad because drinking alcohol is bad because it makes you more liable to be in an accident, as if that you got into a fight because of the alcohol, or you got hit by a car because of the alcohol, or you fell off a building because of the alcohol. And it kind of moves away from everybody taking responsibility for what actually happened. So it means that the focus might not be on the driver that wasn't concentrating. It might take the focus off the person who there was no barriers up on the road, so they fell into the road because there was a dodgy curb or something like that. So if somebody's been drinking alcohol, then they're going to be a victim of some problem. And it's not necessarily the person's fault. So even just because they've been taking illicit drugs doesn't mean that if they have a problem that it was their fault because they were on drugs. It's not the main issue. The relationship between the victim and the offender was known in 176 homicide incidents. And in 2019 to 20 of these incidents, 3 were motivated by an alcohol-related argument and 4 were related to drugs. Right, I'll leave it there. We'll jump onto AOD and homelessness in a minute or in half an hour. I wanted to look at the assessments. You've looked at, or you've started, a lot of people have anyway, doing the quiz. So don't really need to look at that much. Apart from to say that there's 19 questions. These questions aren't to try and catch you out. They're not. The questions aren't to try and figure out what you don't know so that we can catch you out and penalize you. It's just, it's a list of questions based on the unit, in every unit, and you can have like at least 3 goals before anybody starts to struggle. And the idea with HADA is that you can literally just have a go at these and try and look at the learning guide and try and figure most of them out. Just have a go. That's the motivation behind it. Just try and have a go. Because you can keep coming back, even 3 goes, even if you keep getting them wrong. The other side of that is if everybody's getting the same question wrong all the time, then that's something. Have we got a dodgy link that is not, people can't access? Is the information, does the information need updating? Is the question, does it need correcting? Is it phrased badly? And that's what we have to look at. We've got a sheet of assessment corrections that we need to correct that are going through all the time. So have a go, keep trying. If everybody's getting the same one wrong, then that's why, that's what we need to look at. So don't leave that. The other question, assessments project is, I didn't want to do this in class. I was wanting to let you get on with this in your own time. So whatever, something might like plague your interest in class and you might really want to look into something that we've talked about, whatever that is, social, political, economic and legal. That's quite a broad range. Social, political, and obviously these are there's a fine line between a lot of them. With the context of AOD and report on your results, you'll also develop strategies for applying these principles to your workplace practice. When it says workplace practice, you don't have a placement, but that's what it's referring to. If you're doing mental health or you're doing community services, you would still have to do this module and they would have a placement. Yes, Justin.
So yeah, that was kind of my question. So because obviously I can't remember what was in the first slide, but it was going on about your like developing the strategy through all your like off the top of my head because I'm back on that slide, but it was going on about ethics, all those things. But then I'm like, because it said about a workplace, I'm like, did we have to then go on a workplace's website and go through their their whatever their principles and stuff for their workplace, or does that just apply to us as a worker? You know what I mean?
just as you as a worker. A lot of people might be working in the industry. We're planning that you'll be able to use this in your workplace, whatever role you're going to be taking in work. You might be in construction, and you might be the one that's in work health and safety, and you've done a course, a Cert for in AOD, and you might know all about it, and that's why you might be doing this course, or you might be building up to go to be in the industry and work as an AOD worker. And that's what we're focusing on. Because we don't need to focus on a placement. On the other hand, a lot of training institutions do have a placement and do say that you need to have a placement so that you get a better understanding of AOD industry. HADA doesn't think that, and HADA's managed to make sure that you don't have a placement in this. Obviously, that means that your role plays are going to be perfect and fantastic, because that's the best guide we've got when you leave HADA and go into the workforce, that we can say that the role plays, that was the authentic way that you interacted with a client, and it was a real example of how you would work, which I'll jump onto the government page in a sec. Hopefully that answered your question. So this research report, this is what you need to do. That's what you have to address. How do social contexts influence drug use, and how does drug use influence social context? So them slides that I was just looking at about the social impact of AOD use. What is the economic cost to the individual and community of AOD use? What's the political response to these factors? When you look at just these, if you forget about addiction and you forget about people's lives being messed up, personally, like people's individual lives getting messed up, if you just look at these two questions, you could argue that the criminal justice response is probably the best one. So how do social contexts influence drug use, and how does drug use influence social context? And what's the economic cost of the individual and community of AOD use? So thinking that AOD use costs, it impacts society in such a negative way overall that we need to criminalize it, and we need to make sure that anybody that uses in a negative way is criminalized and sent to jail and fined and prosecuted because of the big effects that they're taking part of. But that completely ignores addiction. It completely ignores the individual who's tried for 10, 20, 30 years to get off this thing that they just made a mistake in trying however many years ago, whether that's alcohol or that's heroin. And it ignores the disease and the health model that we're looking at underneath. So AOD policy frameworks which impact your AOD work, historical and social constructs of alcohol and drugs and the changes in alcohol and drug use, legal frameworks which impact on your AOD work. How are these frameworks reflected on your organization, policy, and procedure? Looking underneath at all of these, there's going to be videos and there's going to be YouTube videos, news articles on all of these different styles. So I'm not going to detail them. There's like different slides in other modules and other different points. There was a bit last week on the different styles. But they are there. It's more than just a criminal justice problem, or it's more than just a mental health problem. So developing a strategy, using the research which you conducted, develop a strategy for staying up to date with changes, applying policy frameworks to AOD practice, staying up to date with changes to alcohol and drug use, applying relevant legislative frameworks to your AOD practice, and applying strategies for evidence-based models. And then finally, prepare a report on your personal values regarding AOD. Your report must address personal values. Yes, you can put personal values in there, definitely. And attitudes regarding AOD use. How do your values impact your work in AOD support? Because the first thing that you need to recognize is that you probably are biased, that you do have an opinion, and that it will affect you if you're not careful. And like a lot of the media in society is going to tell us not to be biased and say that it's wrong to be biased, and that we should not treat people. We shouldn't prejudge people, and we should treat everybody exactly the same. But we're not robots, so we do have bias. We do see everybody differently, but when working in community services, the idea is that we have to firstly recognize our personal values and attitudes, and then figure out how that can't affect the way we work. So we have to recognize them and then figure out how to stop it from affecting the client, and making sure every client gets the best possible service, whoever they are. Whether that's because we're a conservative religious person, and we think that drug and alcohol is bad for society and people should be punished. That's a legitimate response in politics. It's definitely legitimate, but we can't, if we believe that, we can't let that affect helping somebody and walking them through harm minimization, which is important. Or we could be the other way around. We could be a strong advocate of people using any substance that they want and having a lived experience of certain substances. Well, that can't affect the fact that in the end, this substance is illegal, or it might be illegal for them, and we have to try and work them towards a certain outcome that is healthy for them and society. So that's the research project. It's pretty straightforward once you get into it. If you can't see anything, if just looking at Danielle's message, if you can't see anything or you don't know how to access something and you need to take a photo with your phone just so that until you know how to get there, then I can stop and you can take a photo of any of this if you need to. There is the horrible event that sometimes the modules aren't open and they're still locked. So in that case, you're going to need to screenshot the screen sometimes. Just mention it if you do. So now let's look at the role play, what needs done. Nope, that's the research project. So the role play is 3 parts. You're required to consider the 2 parts, 2 clients in the. Did we look at this last week? I think we did. You need to respond to the client. Please ensure you identify the client needs and focus on the services needed, recovery process, core values, providing support, communication, your role, and AOD use. Reflecting on your experience, complete a client report for each individual. Use the report template provided to help guide you in your response. So, no, we're not doing that. All we do is this. So, Rosie is a 45-year-old mum and a respected member of my community. In Rosie's chosen field of work, she is responsible, reliable, and professional. Rosie is well, yes, I remember doing this last week. This is the main thing that all the role plays are like assessed on. It's almost a tick list that you have to talk about each individual thing for as long as necessary. This doesn't say, but it's like a 10-minute video, 10-minute role play. So it's literally a couple of minutes each. Then moving on. Alex, different client, but same thing to talk about. So you would have two people interview the first one's Rosie, interview the second one's Alex, and you've done two role plays, 10 minutes each, roughly, or maybe a tiny bit less. And it's five conversations. That's the way it would work. 15 minutes. Okay. So it's a little bit longer. In a simulated workplace environment. So I'll just bring in, I won't be a sec, Justin. I'll just mention the government page again this week. So skills and knowledge required to establish and work within the current context, philosophy and values of the alcohol and other drug sector. This unit applies to workers who come into contact with clients affected by alcohol and other drugs. So the skills that it's talking about, skills must have been demonstrated in the workplace or in a simulated environment. So like I said, we don't have a placement, so we've got to have role plays that are a simulated environment that reflects workplace conditions. Where simulated is used, it must reflect real working conditions by modeling industry, operating conditions, and contingencies. So this is the government's training website. So when the government and politicians, AOD workers, have got together and designed the course, this is the course that they've designed. We're licensed to provide a course that the government have designed. And in that, they want to make sure that it is authentic and it will pass the test, which is why we get audited every year or every couple of years. And they come in and check that we're delivering the course the way they want us to. Okay. Yes, Justin.
I think that pretty much answered it. So this isn't, because I had a look at this today, and I thought you were just supposed to respond yourself in a video, or this is getting another classmate, and one pretending to be Rosie, and then you're doing the thing, explaining it to her, or? Yes.
I'm sorry that this video is still here. So on the back of that, when the audit came through and said, we're checking up on all your resources, they said, basically, these videos are useless. How can we tell that you're counseling somebody when you're replying to a video? We can't see conversation, we can't see interaction, we can't see you listening to the person. So the videos have gone, except they're not, they're still there. So you get somebody to be Alex, and you case working with them, and that's the statement over 15 minutes.
Sweet, cool. Yeah.
Rosie was the first one.
No dramas.
So let's jump back into the breakout rooms. What I'm going to do, I'm going to split everybody up for breakout rooms. Then afterwards, I'm going to finish the slides off. I'm halfway through the PowerPoint. If you've done similar units before, then you might not want to stick around. If this is all new, then stick around for the end of the slides with homelessness and what else is on it. I'll just give a quick homelessness, economic impact of AOD, household expenditure, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander drug and alcohol use. So that's the end of the slides. So if you stick around for that, that's great. You can, but you don't have to because you might have done it before. Anyway, I'll split everybody up for breakout rooms so that we can get started on role plays. I reckon 5. Just wanting to make sure there's a bit of a mix. Yep. All good. So the people that you're with in the breakout rooms, if you don't know what's going on, then most people will know what's going on. So you can be reassured of that. Does anybody need anything before I'll come into the breakout rooms every now and again, but does anybody need anything like the learner guide or any of this? Need to screenshot that or anything? Last week we started on it and some people didn't necessarily get very far and just started to think about where you would, what the first questions would be or where the conversation would go to start off with it. This week, because of last week, and you've been here a couple of weeks, even if you're new, you could jump into this and pretend to be either a client or you could pretend to be a caseworker. Just again, have a go. So it's 1:45 now. So we'll go to break. You have a 10-minute break whenever, and I'll think we'll add some time on after break as well, because otherwise, the 4 people in the room, you're not going to get enough time to do it. So we'll probably come back in half an hour, and then I'll carry on with the slides then. So it'll send you a message to click on something, and you'll get taken to a breakout room.